EV comparison episode between the Hyundai Ioniq 5 versus the Nissan Ariya with Thomas and Autogefuehl in 4K, full screen, full length. Let's go with the Ioniq 5. Big design difference here. We have a retro design and also this more compact hatch design. This is the way how the Volkswagen ID.4, I think, or ID.3 should have looked like, but Volkswagen will also change their design language very soon. We've seen it now with the ID.2 concept. How do you like it? Tell me in the comments. The Nissan Ariya, completely different. More this crossover van style. You can already see how it's larger or higher in the front. Also very interesting as for the daytime running lights. And these two cars have a lot in common actually, but they also have very interesting differences. We'll cover all of that. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. Turning indicators, that's where we are. We can compare it here now. The Ioniq 5, really cool how it replaces the daytime running light. Same with the Nissan Ariya, but here we also have cascading effect. Really interesting. Just visually, you would say that the Ariya is the longer vehicle, but it's not. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 with 4.69 m or 185 inches is about 9 centimeters or 4 inches longer than the Ariya. And also the wheelbase is way longer, which is an advantage for the rear legroom. However, disadvantage for the turning circle. Sometimes when parking in and out, the Ioniq 5 kind of feels bulky, you know. Turning circle more than a meter wider than the one of the Nissan Ariya. And in the side profile, once again, compact hatch style for the Ioniq. And here more this van crossover style for the Ariya. 20-inch wheels we have here, which is not a good idea. You should go for the smaller ones because the suspension in general is stiffer with the Ariya here. And then you rather need the smaller wheels to even it out to get best comfort. In the rear, I love once again this retro tech look of the Ioniq 5. With the Nissan Ariya, it's also a clean design indeed. The rear glass is really slim, so you need this additional camera they're offering then with a digital back mirror. We'll take a look at that very soon. As for the technology, you either have all-wheel drive, so one motor per axle, or with the Ioniq 5 it would be rear-wheel drive. With the Ariya it would be front-wheel drive. As for the efficiency, it's really interesting. The Ariya is capable of a better efficiency. It's in general a little bit more efficient, I can already tell you so far. And in ideal conditions, the consumption has a wider span between these two. But today we'll also do a mix. Some Autobahn, also higher speeds, colder temperatures and so on. And then we'll see what the overall consumption and real world range is. The battery capacity does differ quite a lot on paper, like 77 kilowatt hours for the Ioniq 5 and 87 kilowatt hours for the Nissan Ariya. But will it also have this wide difference in real life when you also recharge the vehicle? And for the net usable capacity, let's see about that, for example, with recharging. As for recharging, the Ioniq 5 leads the Nissan Ariya here in the best possible figure, in best conditions. 18 minutes from 10 to 80% state of charge for the Ioniq 5, 35 minutes for the Nissan Ariya. Today we do a concise test 20 to 80% because the Ioniq 5 preconditioning here stops at about 90% state of charge, that you don't empty the battery before. And so we will do these values here in a concise charging test today and also see if the battery preconditioning for the Ioniq 5 worked. And it directly starts at over 190 kilowatt. So preconditioning worked very well. Look at that charging peak, 224 kilowatt. That's super quick. However, here at over 55%, the charging curve drops, but still quick at 130 kilowatt. But interesting, now it rose again to over 150. And now we had about 18 minutes to 81%. However, it also took like a minute to start up the whole thing. Well, if you want to use some devices for example, photo shootings or for whatever you need, you can use the vehicle to load adapter here for the hairdryer or for maybe like a coffee machine. What device would you actually put to the vehicle to load adapter? Tell me in the comments. And now to the Nissan Ariya, where the charging port is on the passenger side in the front. And we will also put this one from 19 or roughly 20% state of charge. Let's see how much time we will take. And we're starting with some 110 kilowatt. And we see after around 18 minutes, the Ioniq 5 was at 80% and charged 50 kilowatt hours. So definitely quicker, even though this one here has a bigger battery. So see here, 33 kilowatt hours in a time where the Ioniq 5 went 50 kilowatt hours plus. And 80% state of charge we reached at around 28 minutes. So it was 18 minutes with the Ioniq 5 from 20 to 80% state of charge. So 10 minutes quicker with the Ioniq. And the interesting thing is just that the charged energy is almost equal from 20 to 80% state of charge. Interesting. And here, again, not a high peak, but still quite good value then over the period of time. And now let's take a look at the interiors, starting with the Ioniq 5. Inside of the doors, somewhat soft touch on the top. And in the middle part, it's like a somewhat soft again for your elbow, but really straight and clean design. Then the interior looks quite futuristic indeed. The steering wheel has a mix of real buttons and capacitive buttons, drive mode selector on the steering wheel directly. The seats come with fabric and base, and then in the US you get a high-grade leatherette, but in Europe it is animal skin. And I don't understand why they went for that decision then in Europe. Seating position, I think it's fine, nothing special but nothing bad. If we compare to the recent Ioniq 6, by the way, I found that you don't sit more comfortable here, so that was, almost the same as for the seat ergonomics, I feel. Then it's also interesting that with this button down here, you can activate this sleeping mode also for the driver. For example, if you wait at the charging station, goodbye, hello. So you can really relax then while charging. And best thing is, you can do the same function here for the passenger seat. That might be the most fun option then in this vehicle. Interior overview of the Ioniq 5. This dual screen setup, white background as a contrast. Not sure if that's too clever, but overall really clean. Here in the lower part you still have a manual volume knob, and the climate unit is also directly accessible. However, these are some touch fields, and with this one here, this hotkey warmer, you access the seat heating view. This is then the menu where you can set the seat heating or the heated steering wheel, also seat cooling if you have that, or reset it right here. Rest of the infotainment system, this is the main menu. Good overview, but it is not that quick, especially the car internal GPS map, which you would need for the preconditioning, because you have to set a charging station then. This is the first thing you have to do. And then you can pick the option here, battery and condition mode. This has to be checked. And Apple CarPlay or Android Auto integration with cable is actually quite nice. Most of the time you will use this. And when you have a charging station set in the GPS, then you see this small symbol there, this heating spiral symbol. That means the battery preheating is activated. For the battery preconditioning, next to have a charging station set in the car internal GPS as destination, you need more than 40 kilometers or 25 miles left. And state of charge of the battery needs to be 20% or more. So by that, they want to prevent that you empty the battery with the preconditioning. Digital instruments, easy and clear to read. You can change the middle view here a little bit what you want to see. And you can also get this head-up display. Not ideal. The charging cable for the CarPlay or Android Auto connection has to be here. Then you can either put your smartphone in there, but that's not ideal. So rather have a long cable, because wireless not possible, and then have your smartphone right here. Yeah, really not ideal at all. What's cool, however, that you can slide this whole middle console forward or backward, that you have more space here or not. Then you have charging possibilities here, inductive charging pad as well. And then here, more space underneath this armrest, and you can also slide this open, so really vast amount of space in the middle console. In the rear I made space because I have slided this middle console forward now. Then inside of the doors we have also soft touch materials almost everywhere basically. Then we also can get a rear seat heating. When I get inside, let's see, to the seat as I'm driving, we still have some legroom left, so good offering of space. But you see it's leant quite backward, but I maybe could move it a little bit more upright. Headroom with 189 or 6'2", still okay also in the rear. The rear bend is quite low. You see it here also here how high my legs are comparing to the seat, but it's actually fine. This is also equipped with the electric adjustment for the rear bench. You can slide it forward or backward, and then you can also adjust the back part here manually. And interesting also that from the driver's seat you can also control the rear with these buttons, and then you can slide this one or the other part forward or backward. Especially for charging cables, you also have a small frunk here in the Ioniq 5. Trunk opening, either the automatic one when you stand here with the key in your pocket and then wait a couple of seconds, or press it in the lower part. 530 liters, bigger than the Nissan Ariya. The width here is a little bit less than 1 meter or 40 inches, and the length also a little bit less than 1 meter or 40 inches, but that's well usable. Just the height here underneath the cover is really shallow here, so I would maybe just put it out. But the total height here is actually fine with some, a little more than 75 centimeters or 30 inches. But again, just the problem that it's shallow underneath this one here. Yeah, I think when you take it out, you're actually fine. Then you can also fold the seats, but there's no possibility here, so you have to go around. And then you're here at 180 meters or 71 inches to the seats as I would be driving. And under the trunk cover, if there's space for charging cables, well, when you lift this one totally up, then they're stuck underneath. That's not a very practical solution, isn't it? Then rather in the front, I guess. I love this detail. Look at how they covered the side of the trunk cover in felt. So when you then put it back to position, then you don't leave scratches all over the vehicle. Good idea. The Nissan Ariya gets a very slim key fob. Well done, actually. And also real door handles. Actually, I prefer the real stuff. Do you as well? Then door closing sound. Very solid. Inside of the doors, here with very nice microfiber. These are the optional animal skin seats. However, there are also microfiber seats available. And we had them in the bright trim, but they're also available in the black trim. And they are also the ones to go for, besides base fabric seats also available. Interesting here, the front seating position, whereas the Ioniq 5 is a longer vehicle, this one here feels longer and bigger. So yeah, a very interesting contradiction. Seating wise, the comfort I feel is better in the Ioniq 5. However, comparing here now the animal skin versus the animal skin seats, the microfiber seats in the Ariya were also actually way better than these ones here. Tested them in an earlier review. Steering wheel up and down, in and out, but I feel it doesn't go down enough, at least for tall persons. Interesting is that this middle console here, you can slide it all the way forward for most rear legroom for the middle seat, but you can also slide it backward here. Then you maybe, it fits better with your elbow or something, or then you have more space here in the front. Interior overview of the Nissan Ariya has more a wow effect, even cleaner, really nice with this matte wood console here, and the climate control is kind of integrated in there. It looks amazing, is backlit, but it's not that easy to control, not that intuitive, because when do you hit it or when not, you don't really know. Real knob here still for the volume, for example, and I love this microfiber covering here. And here is one unit for both screens actually. Well, these black pads here, they collect a lot of fingerprints, but these here in the middle, they are still real buttons and scrollers. The digital instruments do their job, but also the visualization, I think, is just not really up to date, is it? And you can also get a head-up display. Apple CarPlay here, also available wireless. And Android Auto is of course also available. And this is the main menu. And yeah, that looks, I don't know, I think the 90s have called and want their infotainment system back. However, here, what is really interesting is that the GPS map is actually quite responsive. And here in the options view, you go to EV, and there you can also activate the battery heater for the preconditioning. And also the rest of the heating controls really complicated to do. For example, the seat heating, I think there are just too many steps to do that. The normal back mirror, well, the view to the rear is limited, so here this camera view makes sense. Shifting lever definitely more beautiful and easier to control in the Ioniq 5 here. It's a little bit bulky, this whole form, I think. And these two friends here, they open the special compartment. Well, you can't make that up, but it is true. Electronically folds out. Yeah, I have no idea why, but there's one advantage to it. Here, when it's closed and you shut off the vehicle, no one can open it. The optional panoramic roof is gladly also one you can actually open. Rear seating is decent here also in Nissan Ariya. Legroom, you definitely have more in the Ioniq 5. It's also a longer vehicle. Here it gets close, but it's still fine. And the comfort in seating is also actually okay. Here in the middle part, you can fold down this for cup holders, but they're not adaptive. And here also, it falls down. So build quality-wise, Yeah, I mean, at the inside of the doors, also nice here with the microfiber, for example, and also the back part here of the seats. So it has pros and also cons. In the middle part, you have seat heating here also and USB-C charging. Well, and both here, the outside seats really close with the head, also counts here for the middle seating that is even closer. Nissan Ariya trunk, actually way wider than a meter or 40 inches, that's good. Length like 95 centimeters or 38 inches. So in the dimensions comparable, liter figure wise, it's actually less. 415 for the all-wheel drive model, a little bit more here for the front-wheel drive model. And for the charging cables, you can lift up this here and they make it that you have an even loading surface. So liter figure wise, it's way less, but you know, from the usable aspect, not so much difference. The Ariya is shorter, so it's 177 centimeters or around 69 inches for the total length of the trunk. The limitation is really in height, but just when this bottom floor is mounted, when you remove it, it's comparable. Trunk? No, there is none. Just equipment here underneath. Welcome to Thomas's Comparison Driving Lounge, starting with the Hyundai Ioniq 5. We put it here to the sports mode for quickest acceleration. Soon more details on that as well. Official figure 0 to 100 is around 5 seconds, so almost a second quicker than the Nissan Ariya. But let's see how it goes here from 50 kilometers an hour, accelerating onto the motorway. Let's go. $130, $160, that's $180. Let's see if we can reach top speed here. There we go. 189 kilometers an hour and still reasonably silent in here. So this, by the way, is speed limit here now, just counting between different time period. At the moment it's unlimited. But here at top speed, it still feels really good, actually. So surprisingly good indeed, although it's not a huge or super sporty vehicle or something. Now we're getting off the throttle. And by the way, here the consumption at this top speed, including the acceleration, here at about 60 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers. So that's like triple the normal, the normal average consumption. Yeah, but here now let's go to a more reasonable motorway speed. Let's have this. This is an RSQ8, I think so. Overtake. Is it one? Let's see. Yes. No, it's an SQ8, not RSQ8, but SQ8. So here at 130 kilometers an hour, so you know, like 70, 80 miles an hour. Once again, it feels really nice and settled on the motorway. So it feels actually agile, although it's not too small. But it also feels planted on the motorway. Difference to the recently driven Ioniq 6, by the way, is that the Ioniq 6 somehow, I think it drives better indeed, because it's sitting a little bit lower, it's a little bit calmer also. As for the shaking up effects here, the car does shake up notably when I'm going some left and right and so on. Lane change here, yeah, I mean, it's not too bad. The suspension, I think, is also a good compromise between sportiness and comfort, so I'm overall happy. We have the 19-inch wheels mounted here. But it's not too uncomfortable also when there's some bumps in the road. I think overall they found a very, very good setup. But again, I think the Ioniq 6 drives better when I have the direct comparison, you know. Here, of course, it's way more practical with the separate opening hatch if you want to carry something, or people, also family use and so on. That's where this vehicle here has a big advantage indeed. And in comparison to the Ariya, yeah, the Ariya feels a little bit bulkier in driving, I would say, just from the first impression. But of course, we'll soon compare it once again when we drive the Ariya. As for recuperation, you can set different levels. Level 0 would be with throttle and just rolling, 1, 2, 3. And then you can also, at the speed, set the I pedal. Then you have a strong deceleration when you get off the throttle. It doesn't have any efficiency effect. It's just about what you prefer actually when you drive the vehicle. The I pedal is not saved when you restart the vehicle. Then it's basically reset on level 3 to 1 you can actually have when you restart the vehicle again, but the I pedal is always being resetted, so yeah, that's not the biggest advantage. You know, once again, lane change feels really nice. Is it a good long-term vehicle? Well, the efficiency long-term on the high-speed motorway is not that good actually. So that's better in the city. Here also not the best drag coefficient. That's where the Ioniq 6 would have an advantage once again. And the seating comfort here is also not bad, but it's also not the best seat ergonomics I have experienced. When you went for the fabric version of the seats, they give you a softer cushioning in the top part of the seat, so they are actually then also better as for the long-term experience. We'll also check out if this is better than with the Nissan Ariya. And now to the Agile characteristics when we switch the motorways here. In the sport mode, by the way, I still have more feedback from the steering. It doesn't feel that sporty actually, so definitely not the emphasis of this vehicle, especially as for suspension, but for the normal setup, that's actually a wise choice. Here, by the way, in the normal driving mode, the steering is softer. Would I say it's a lot of fun to drive? Not the sportiest driving fun, I would say, but again, not the emphasis of this vehicle. Also, it doesn't have to be, but also in the normal driving mode, it goes really quick. So the thing is, I talked to the engineer with the Ioniq 6 recently, and the power curves are different. Like the sport mode curve is like this, and the normal is like this. But the peak power, he told me, is always the same. Let's just try if you can really feel the difference. If we do like some from 100 kilometers an hour, like an acceleration. Now in normal mode, let's do like 100 to 130. Let's go. Plop, that's it. And then let's do it in sport mode one more time. And let's also peak it through. So this car was overtaking. Now again from 100 kilometers an hour. Let's go. Plop. That felt quicker, didn't it? But we have to see the time code if that really changed. And now to the Nissan Ariya, we also switch to the sport mode. Gives me more throttle in the pedal, definitely. And let's see, acceleration from 70 kilometers an hour. 100. 130. And 150. So this is here the front-wheel driven version, so not 100% comparable. We could not get an all-wheel drive model to compare yet here, but Brian could also test one at the driving event. So even if you have the all-wheel drive model, then the Ariya is a second slower than the all-wheel drive model of the Ioniq 5. And here, this one then is about 2.5 seconds slower in the acceleration 0 to 1 kilometers an hour or 0 to 62 miles an hour. But the rest, of course, will be absolutely comparable. Actually, I have the feeling that the Nissan Ariya is a little bit more silent here on the motorway. We also saw that in the rear even you have dual insulation glass, so that's really cool. You more get this van traveling feeling here with the Nissan Ariya, whereas the Ioniq 5 feels just more compact. So it definitely feels more agile. The Nissan Ariya, I mean, the EVs all have the low center of gravity, so a lane change here, for example, also feels good and calm and collected and so on. No problem at all. The suspension actually shakes up less than with the Ioniq 5. So that's kind of the strange thing, you know. The Ioniq 5 feels sportier dimension-wise, but the Nissan Ariya feels sportier suspension-wise. What to make of that? Yeah, that's a tough thing actually. Steering here, by the way, is more artificial. So here, not so much is happening, but there is some effect. But then it gets kind of a lot of resistance to left and right, but not in a natural way, you know. So the steering here, to me, feels more artificial than in the Ioniq 5. Seating position in general. You see it even while driving it. Once again, I have hardly any room above my head. So for tall people, let's imagine, you know, I put my spine all the way up, and then there's like a bump coming or something. I might even hit my head at the ceiling, you know. So for tall people, not ideal. And also the seats here, especially in this animal skin trim, pretty stiff and so on. You have more comfort in the microfiber seats or the base fabric seats. We've tested them earlier also at a different review. So that is definitely helping out with this vehicle. But still remains with the fact that it's not ideal for tall people overall. You can maybe put the seat, like the back part a little bit more back, then it's, that is definitely helping you. So, but from a whole driving feeling, it more feels like this straight cruiser. This is really an electric vehicle that most reminds me, both visually and also in driving, of a classic van, actually. So that's really astonishing. But suspension setup, I don't feel it's uncomfortable with this little bit harder setup. The lane changes are indeed better with the Ariya, so that's the one exception where the Ariya is better. Steering feel and just how the room feel for this for sporty driving, that is then better with the Ioniq 5. But the astonishing thing to me is that they're all fishing in more or less the same segment, but they feel indeed really different in driving. As for regenerative braking, you either have the E pedal off and then you lift your foot off the accelerator pedal and you have rather rolling, a little bit of deceleration, but then you can also set the E pedal here, this middle console, and then you have strong recuperation. Then it rather tends to do some one pedal driving feeling. So this is really a strong recuperation then, and you can basically just choose what suits you better. It won't change anything of the efficiency, because when you have the E pedal off, and then you can just use the brakes, and then also recuperation is happening. By the way, this digital back mirror, I usually am a friend of normal mirrors, but here in this case, since the view to the rear is really limited, it is kind of a helpful thing indeed. Then here now, changing the motorways, it actually feels good. So it feels really nice. As for the suspension, so no body roll at all without losing too much comfort, but just steering feel is a little bit off. So my favorite combination would be the suspension of the Ariya and the steering feel of the Ioniq 5. That would, to me, be the best choice overall. So next motorway right here, we can do more acceleration, see also what the lane change also while accelerating. You also heard this acoustic blind spot monitor warning. Do you have enough power with the front wheel driven version only? Yeah, even when accelerating onto the motorway, that's more than enough power indeed. The all-wheel drive model, of course, gives you more punch if you really want or need it, but you will find here. So some electric vehicles, when they have the single motor version only, maybe they're not quick enough, but for most, and also including the Ariya here, the single motor version would also be definitely enough. Remember that also one crucial difference is that the Ariya, in this all-wheel drive spec also, is really, really expensive. And that might also play a role in our very final verdict indeed. One more word to the assistance systems. I have now set the steering assist to on, and here the car is being kept in the center of the lane, so that's actually a very smooth transition overall. Really like that. And you can always deactivate these systems here in the instruments also while driving. It's actually not too hard to do that. Now the question is, which one would you take home? Which one would I take home? Well, they do come close in a lot of ways. Design-wise, of course, not at all. There I clearly would decide for the Ioniq 5 from the exterior design. Interior design, I love both. Really futuristic from the inside. In the Ariya, you shouldn't be too tall, so I still fit. Anything taller than me, not a good idea actually, but both are very well usable also for the space from the inside. The Ioniq 5, due to the longer wheelbase, a little bit more flexibility as for the legroom. Well, but then driving like EV-wise and so on, the thing is that the Ioniq 5 has the advantage with charging. It's just so much more quicker in fast charging. On the other hand, the Nissan Ariya has a little bit bigger battery. But we found out in charging that the net usable battery difference is not as large as the numbers would suggest. So at the end of the day, also efficiency-wise, the Nissan Ariya is a little bit more efficient, but there's also not again that large of a difference. So we end up with both about 22 kilowatt hours on 100 kilometers. That's about 2.8 miles per kilowatt hour. The Nissan Ariya is usually a little bit better than that, and the Ioniq 5 a little bit worse than these values. Together with a little bit bigger battery, the Nissan Ariya comes like 430, 440 kilometers, so like 260, 270 miles, whereas the Ioniq 5 more or less 400 kilometers or 250 miles. Not a large difference at all then, I have to say. And so it comes down to the price difference, or what you like better as for the design. And price difference wise, the Nissan Ariya is clearly more expensive. So at the same price, I would just pick on design or preference. But since there is a large price difference, the Ioniq 5 then wins the overall comparison. What do you think? Leave me your comments right there, and also tune in to more comparison episodes.